Welcome to the Zero Employee Company, based on the book by Giovanni Brees. Last episode made the case that memory beats the model. Now it's time to get specific. The 5 layers of memory Giovanni actually runs, and why the differences between them matter so much. Start with the basic idea. Memory isn't all the same. A fact that's true today and a fact that's true forever need different treatment, so they shouldn't sit in the same place. One needs to be quick to write and easy to forget. The other needs to be protected and changed only when absolutely necessary. Most people building AI memory throw everything into one bucket, then the bucket rots. You can't remove a stale fact without risking the loss of a permanent one. Giovanni's answer is to separate memory by lifespan. There are 5 layers, running from the shortest lived to the most permanent. Layer 1 is the daily log. Whenever an agent does something, it adds a time-stamped line. What it did, where the output lives, and who it was for. The file is append only. Nobody edits it, and there's one file for each day. When an agent starts up, it reads today's log and yesterday's. That's usually enough recent context to carry on without dragging the entire history into every task. And there's a hard rule here. The task isn't finished until the log line has been written. This layer is meant to be cheap. It's disposable working memory for the operation, and it's supposed to age out. Layer 2 is a stable context file with one file for each agent. This isn't a running log. It's a document about the current state, who the client is, what tone the agent should use, what has already been decided, and what the agent must never do. The whole thing depends on brutal pruning. Only information that's still true gets to stay. Here's the line Giovanni thinks is worth putting on the wall. A stale fact is worse than no fact. An agent will act on bad information with complete confidence. If a file says the priority is X 3 weeks after X stopped being the priority, that line isn't harmless clutter. It's a live liability. So when reality changes in layer 2, the new truth doesn't get added beside the old truth. The old line comes out. That's why layer 2 stays small. Layer 3 holds permanent facts. Giovanni calls it the Constitution. This is where the things that must survive indefinitely go. Where credentials live, which agent is allowed to touch which property, and the constraint created after a painful mistake that should never be forgotten. The discipline is almost the reverse of layer 2. Layer 2 gets pruned hard. Layer 3 barely grows. The rule is simple. If everything gets called permanent, the word stops meaning anything. Only information that's genuinely forever belongs here. New entries are rare and deliberate. A lot of operators get this backward. They let the permanent layer swell with facts that were only true for a quarter, and pretty soon the Constitution is full of expired instructions. Layer 4 is the mistakes log. This is the layer that lets the system improve itself. Anytime an agent fails or gets corrected, it receives a structured entry covering what it was doing, what failed, the root cause, the fix, and the prevention rule. That last part is mandatory. A mistake without a prevention rule is just a diary entry. It isn't learning. If the same root cause appears twice for the same agent, Giovanni doesn't add another note and move on. The agent's actual instructions get changed. That's why an agent in month 6 makes fundamentally different mistakes from the ones it made in month 1. The model hasn't become smarter. Its correction history has built up into permanent constraints. Layer 4 gets a full episode of its own because most of the real gains come from here. Layer 5 is long-term memory, kept in a vector store. Once a week, a pass through the logs pulls out the durable facts and stores them for later retrieval by meaning rather than exact match. This is the layer that makes the system genuinely smarter over time instead of merely keeping records. But it needs discipline. Only information worth remembering forever gets stored there. Session noise stays in the daily logs and eventually gets archived. That keeps the vector store clean. Giovanni runs it on an open source memory layer built for agents, though honestly the tool is the least interesting part. What matters is the weekly consolidation habit. That gets an episode of its own, too. Now take a step back and look at how this is arranged. That's the useful bit. The 5 layers are ordered by how long their information should live and how often it should change. Layer 1 lasts for a day and changes all the time. Layer 2 tracks the current state, so it changes whenever reality does. Layer 3 is the constitution and almost never changes. Layer 4 collects corrections, then turns repeated problems into rules. Layer 5 is the durable long-term store, where information can be retrieved by meaning. Each layer has its own rules for writing information. Those rules match the expected lifespan of the facts inside it. That's what stops the whole system from slowly filling up with nonsense. And this matters more than the tools. Put everything in one place and you're stuck with two bad choices. You can avoid pruning, which means stale facts pile up and agents confidently act on them. Or you can prune aggressively and risk deleting something that was supposed to be permanent. Separating memory by lifespan gets rid of that problem. Giovanni can prune layer 2 without touching layer 3. He can let layer 1 age out without losing any durable facts. This layering isn't bureaucracy. It makes aggressive pruning safe. And aggressive pruning is how the memory stays true. So if you're building something like this, don't begin with a clever database. Begin with two plain questions. How long should this information live, and how often should it change? Once you've answered those, the right layer is usually obvious. The next episode goes into the one file that sits above all 5 layers and keeps every agent aligned, the world model. Giovanni Brees laid out the full stack in his book, The Zero Employee Company. Link in the show notes. See you in the next one.